Guam and Half a Day Action Pack members. Welcome to another episode of the We Want to Know Action Pack Show. I'm your host yet again, Phil Leddy, Executive Director of the Action Pack. And we have a repeat guest today. We have one of your candidates vying for one of your 15 senatorial votes in the upcoming general election. Early voting is open now. We have senatorial candidate, Mr. Vince Borja. Half a day, Vince.
Hello, Phil. Thank you, Action Pack, for having me today.
Well, thank you again for accepting yet another invite. For those that didn't catch the first episode, Vince joined us for the primary interviews leading up to the primary voting, and the Guam voters saw confidence in his platform, and thus he is a candidate in the general election. So before we jump right into our interview, Vince, this is a great time for you to give a welcoming remarks and possibly just introduce yourself to those new viewers.
Half a day, everybody. Like introduce, my name is Mr. Vince Borja. I'm number 3 on the Republican side of the ballot. I'm a son of Guam. I was born and raised here. I graduated from George Washington High School. I went out to join the military. I'm a graduate of the University of Guam School of Business. I also hold a master's degree in business and also a master's degree in leadership. I'm currently a doctorate student in studying business with an emphasis on organizational leadership. I'm a small business owner, an Army veteran. We have 2 kids at home, married to Miss Naomi Borja. She's also a school counselor in the public school system. And yeah, I'm here today to share my platform and the things that are very important to me, which really aligns with what the Action Pack stands for, but I think is what's very important for Guam and how we move forward post-pandemic, and how hopefully we can support a lot of the things that we need to do in the community to build a strong economy to address a lot of the issues in our community. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely, and thanks again for your time. I with all the candidates that I have interviewed, many are definitely successful in their own right. But Vince, I gotta say, man, your resume is plentiful and it is quite an achievement. And one of the things that I personally noticed is when with your achievements, you really have a see it through type of attitude to not just stop at your bachelor's, but to go to your master's, and now you're saying you're a doctorate. You're going through your doctorate program in a certain field, and then also just the mixture and a diverse areas of your expertise, and it's awesome. It's always awesome to see it, and I think I said it the first time, and I'll repeat it. That really makes a well-rounded candidate and someone that can really lend multiple expert areas to the government, as far as when we're talking about legislatures that touch different avenues of our life. So thank you so much for that. So real quick, we're going to run down a summary of our previous interview with you. So if you can touch on some of your campaign pillars.
I think, or not I think, but a lot of, the 3 things that I think we need to address and push the executive branch to address, as well as a legislature, is crime. Right? When you look at crime, that affects, it affects families, it affects the communities, which in turn affects the businesses. It affects, or that you tie that to drugs, which is part of being, crime. And so crime is number 1, because I think that as we move forward in rebuilding our economy, we need to fix that, address that. And then next, I think the education system, we need to look at that, because I think that's important again, because again, most of our our students in the community come from the public school system. A lot live in poverty. So I think that the education system plays a big role in the future of these kids. And so we need to ensure that the teachers and their staff have everything they need to be that front line in saving, a lot of these kids in the direction they're headed. So I think education is important. And then the other thing is veteran issues. And so, of course, I'm an Army veteran. I understand the frustration. I understand that the lack of services that there is for veterans with just the CBOC. So in regards to that, I think it's important, period, that we address access to healthcare, period, in the community, because when we address that, we also improve access for veterans, because there is a program that allows veterans that can't get specific services from the VA to get it locally. And and of course that helps our medical community in regards to economic growth. And so though with those three things, though, I need to highlight this, because people always say, well, you don't talk about the economy and you talk about it in some of your different things, is that ultimately, yes, that like in order to address all of that, we need a strong economy, right? It's just like when we talk about we need to worry about the environmental issues, but then we want to make, that is important. But again, we need businesses to do well, and we need the economy to do well for the government to do well. Without a strong economy and businesses doing well, then there really isn't a lot that the government can do, because then that, that's the main leg of the government's resources is businesses. And so I think that those four things are important in regards to my platform and what I think is important for the next legislature.
And thank you for that. Those are all very I mean, I think almost any citizen will do those four things. Those always hit on a personal level. The crime aspect is through the roof. So it's something that we need to address. Definitely, along with the educational aspect. I mean, I'm a public school kid myself, and before I moved off island, I graduated in Orange County, California. I was a student at Simon Sanchez for a couple of years, and the issues that building is facing today have been the issues since I was going to school in 2000. And it's not fair for any set election year to say it's the previous election year. It's been some time, and I think that's the exhaustion and the frustration for the teachers and the students and the parents that are from these districts where the schools are dilapidated, and they're in serious need. Um, but I like how you tied everything together with the economy. But I think all things that you mentioned, that they all interchange, because if we address a crime issue, then the students and the teachers feel a lot safer. There was that incident outside Simon Sanchez again, where an adult was caught assaulting a student after school. I mean, a lot of these things, it's when the economy is struggling, and then we have I hate to say it, but we have a thriving um, drug crisis, and then you throw in the struggles and the frustration of the housing market for the local population. I mean, it's just a perfect storm for a very rough patch of years. But that's why it's so important to have the right leaders in place that are looking to take action now. And that's what the Action Pack is all about. We are comprised of members of a cross section of Guam society, representing all walks of life, and we are united in the belief that we can affect change through action. Action is the most important word, and I love that each of your focus items are action-based items. Same thing with the VA. My father is a veteran himself, and he's going through the VA program, but he's been going through the same for the same issue. It's been over a year and a half, and there's just still a stall because
Mhm.
they don't have the specialist on island. So I mean, those are four very important issues to many of us here on island. So I appreciate that. Now, I know we touched on this, and it might be the same answer, or through your campaign to be a senator, you might have saw a different need through a conversation. So, what's one main focus item that you can share that you believe you can realistically accomplish in the 37th Guam legislature?
With tying it to what I said previously in regards to crime and education, and realistically, we can definitely give more money to GPD and really beef it up, and we can give more money to the to GDOE to be able to give teachers and to, I mean, again, it's all about resources. And I think that realistically we can do that. And at the end of the day, and I said this in the previous interview, and I say this all the time, whether it was for campaigning, whether it was in my management position in corporate or in nonprofit or in the military, is that we only fail when we lack the ability to be resourceful, right? We can never, there's a problem, there's a solution. It may not be the best, and it may not, it may not be everything that, may not be the perfect scenario to fix an issue, but we can give GPD what they need. I mean, you look at the surplus, they brag about the surplus. You look at the expenses in the government, there's no excuse why we can't provide resources to the basic government services that the government should provide: education, public safety, public health, and what is the other one? I think that's it, right? Public safety, public education, and public health, right? And you got public works and all these other things. But those three things are very important. If you can fund all these other things, and I'm not saying those are not important, but that's realistic. Like for the schools to be dilapidated, for police to be short staffed or under resourced, and people working overtime, like that's not an excuse, especially with the billions of dollars that we've received, right? So definitely, and I don't see why most candidates can't say that. It's realistic. Like, let's take care of the basic services, and then we can start doing all these nice things. But definitely, I think that's realistic. Is give more money to all these basic tenants of government for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, those are the pillars of government, right? And you're right. Those are the three main areas that the government is supposed to function within. And I want to echo your statement. I mean, there are very other nice things, but another candidate that I was interviewing, they opened my eyes when they're like, well, you won't believe, but there's about 51 separate government agencies on this island. And I mean, when you spread yourself too thin, your priority areas are overlooked or underfunded, and that is an issue in itself. So yeah, definitely, we really need to get back to the root of what government is, and being big and robust. That's really not what our founding country was based upon. Small government, but a very efficient and responsive government, and then a robust business industry. So thank you for that. Now again, we always like to say, and it's no secret, Action Pack is comprised of the largest business organizations on Guam, with a plethora of member companies and auxiliary services that pump the blood through our local economy. So definitely pro-business. We touched on it the last interview. What is what and you kind of touched on it in this interview as well. But what is one way or a creative way that you're looking to help the local business community as we continue to progress past the economic struggling period?
Well, one, we need to roll back the BPT. The recent surplus. I think it was like 31 million, right? That the current administration is touting. Definitely roll back the BPT. I mean, it was only supposed to be temporary. And then next, we need to look at a lot of the red tape that the government has put in place, that really disrupts and prohibits businesses from thriving. I mean, and again, businesses don't thrive, the economy doesn't thrive, government doesn't thrive in regards to providing basic services. So definitely look at removing a lot of that red tape, improving how we provide government services to businesses, again, so businesses can do well, right? We don't need them waiting in lines and running all over the island just to get a permit or to get a business license or to get some kind of paper signed so that they can, run their business. And so I think those two things, remove government from, because they don't have to be in, the less government, the better. And I'm not saying that businesses can do whatever they want, but there's just a lot of different, as a small business owner, I mean, man, I don't have a physical location. I do a lot of consulting and a marketing stuff on the side, but even just that, to get a business license, it's like the website is supposed to work, but then it doesn't work. And then you go there and they say you can do it. And there's just a lot of runaround. But definitely, I mean, from real estate to basic business services, I mean, we need to digitize the way we do government. And I know it's minor and it's not an issue that makes spam cheaper. But again, businesses do well, government does well, and our community does well. And so definitely those two things I think will help the business community without any effort. It doesn't, it's not going to hurt anybody. So yeah, those are the two things I think that are important for businesses.
And I think that's huge because on the automation of government services, it's 2022, people. I mean, the proof of concept is there in almost any city, county, or municipality in the mainland.
Mhm.
All we need to do is reach out and ask somebody, and I guarantee you they will point us in the right direction. And then, we can always do it where we find an area that has the similar population, similar community demands, like we do here on island. And like I said, need not reinvent the wheel, just jump on board, So I love that. I that's one thing that I look forward to every year, is the next step of government automation on Guam, because the technology has been around. Again, it's 2022. So thank you for that. So now what's new with this set of interviews is we are going to run down the Action Pack initiatives. We wouldn't be a strong a political action committee if we didn't really have our own solid pillar beliefs and whatnot. So I will go down our 5 initiatives one at a time, and you can agree, disagree, or you can elaborate on where you stand on the issues. The first one, you kind of already answered it, so that was awesome. The first one is our biggest area of focus of effort is the application and lobbying of the rollback of the BPT from 5 to 4%, maybe even less, immediately for all businesses. I heard that you are a huge supporter of that. So
Absolutely, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it all the way until it happens, because again, I mean, even before the pandemic, the government was doing fine, and it was only supposed to be temporary. It's not fair to businesses, they made that sacrifice, and they didn't, they did it, one, because of the tax cuts. I mean, they have the Democrats back in the White House, and there's a lot of money coming back, again, it reversed what was done, and a lot more, because you had the COVID funds and the ARP, and we still have $300 million sitting in the bank that really you see right now is being thrown everywhere, right? To create all these programs. Yeah, there's these programs to help businesses, but again, like that doesn't still make up for the years and years of the increase in taxes, and so I think businesses deserve a break. And that not only helps the businesses as well, but it helps the employees, which helps the community and helps the economy, and it keeps things moving. And we're in a great position. Nobody can argue that the government has a lot of money, not just from ARP, but I mean in tax collections, right? So the coffers are full, and they're doing a lot of nice things right now. You have businesses making lots of cuts, so definitely support the rollback of the BPT permanently.
definitely, there you go. I love that. And one thing that I always like to point out to the viewers and the voters, that might not be know the in-depth discussions in regards to taxes on island is some people, contrary to what we believe, they say, oh, you roll it back, then the government's gonna be struggling and the taxes are not gonna come in. That's not true. When you roll back the BPT, you're actually allowing businesses to grow. You're allowing more job opportunities and the people to thrive, which means more buying power. So actually, in fact, there will be the same, if not more, taxes collected because the vibrancy of our economy is now taken to the next level and the next level. And then we add when the tourism finally reopens and all of these new industries that we're going to explore. So I mean, it isn't a lifeline. It is actually a almost like an adrenaline push for our local economy. And you said it, it was supposed to be temporary from the get-go. So we also love lawmakers that keep their word as well.
And then before we move on, I want to also highlight, so everybody knows too, right, that even now with the Section 30 funds, right, like even this year, I think we're supposed to get like $70 million in advance payments of the Section 30 funds, which is really money that is really coming from the federal government that we really didn't, it's not coming from our local. Yes, it's workers, but at the same time, like this is money that the federal government could really keep, and so 70 million is a lot.
That's a
So
lot of
yeah,
money.
definitely, yeah.
That's a lot of money. And that rolls into our second initiative is because, I mean, just like us business owners and business leaders and corporations, we operate on a strict and slim budget. And we have to, operational costs and there's expenses and taxes and so on and so forth. So we also our second initiative is we advocate for government efficiency to protect and preserve its resources. Where do you stand on that?
Definitely, like I said earlier, in regards to some of the things that I think that we need to do to support businesses is you definitely look at a lot of, especially a lot of the outdated rules and regulations, and look at a lot of the processes, and definitely look at how we can streamline and improve efficiency. Because again, like it just circles back to just basic, I mean, the government's not a business, but when you look at like your purpose, right, you understand like my role as a government is to assist the community in keeping things in order and keeping people safe and keeping the economy moving and regulating it so that crazy things are not happening, at least the illegal stuff. But I think definitely that's one of the things. Guam especially, man, it's so crazy that I mean I moved home almost 12 years ago from the military, but even at that point when I came home 12 years ago, I realized just how inefficient things are, and you fast forward to 12 years later, and it hasn't gotten any better. It definitely has not gotten any better. And really, even now, when you look at some of the things that have improved just a little bit, I mean, it's still not perfect, is that it was COVID that forced us into a lot of these things. Not necessarily because we had good leaders at the top that wanted to, because you look at that, like they just did those things and those were just temporary, obviously, because now the systems are not working the way they thought it would be. They rushed it. And so, it's again, really looking at how we can support ultimately businesses, because the businesses employ the community, and you employ the community, they contribute back and less likely to turn to drugs and less likely to turn to crime. And it's like any you look at a lot of the prospering, little communities in the US or even in foreign countries, when the businesses are doing great, the economy is doing great, the community is doing great, crime is down, right? And so those are some things that with efficient government that keeps their hand out of a lot of things that they don't need to, businesses will do well and the community will do well. And I think that that's where we need to shift our focus.
That's awesome. Empowering the citizen, with opportunities, definitely leads to them resorting to being dependent on substance, or even being dependent on public service, or public handouts, government handouts. Those programs are always going to be necessary, but they shouldn't be a cornerstone to the everyday life. So because if, like you said, if there's the economy is healthy, then people, I firmly believe that there is a sense of dignity, of hard work, that the generations before us, they had. There's something so dignifying about going to work, earning your wage, knowing that you're supplying, you have the opportunity to provide for your family at home, and then also enjoy the fruits of your labor. And I think that the pandemic definitely highlighted and possibly ignited a dependency system that we really need to work hard to get away from, because that's not a culture, that's just not a culture that's worth fostering, in my opinion. All right, great. So number 3 is improve the transparency at all levels of the government of Guam, and promote open communication and collaboration between the public and private sector. Where do you stand?
Definitely, and that's why I encourage the viewers, and I encourage you to tell your friends and family to vote Republican. I think that we need to, and sadly, we haven't really seen that transparency. God bless the current senators in the 36th Guam legislature and before that, but I feel like we're not asking the tough questions in regards to the things that occur and where money goes and what it's being used for, and so we need, in order to create that balance. Hopefully we have a Republican governor, right? I'm rooting for that, but at the same time, there should be checks and balances, and it doesn't seem like the legislature has done that. So definitely we need to elect leaders that are going to be able to put their party differences aside and their loyalty to whoever sits in office. I think for me, Republican or Democrat, our job as a legislature is to be able to ask these tough questions and to hold the executive branch accountable and hold them and ensure that they're transparent. I know that there have been amendments to the budget bill that has required the executive branch to provide reports of where money has been spent. There hasn't really been a consistent report, or a report that's transparent. If you pay attention to some of the public hearings, you'll see that there's just a lot of fluff and a lot of they make the legislature run in circles in regards to providing responses to some of the tough questions, and nobody has really held the government. I mean, whether it be executive or legislature, nobody's held them accountable. So I'm putting with you to hold them accountable by electing people that are going to do that. And I think that's, I mean, I'm a firm believer of transparency, and we need to trust our government. If you're not wondering where your money is being spent, I mean, if you're a taxpayer and you're working hard every day, everybody works hard. I mean, I don't care what level in the organization you're contributing, you're paying a lot of taxes so that people in the government can provide to the community. So I encourage you to care and to elect people that are going to ask those questions.
Absolutely. We do too. Excellent. So number 4, our 4th initiative is to strengthen relations with the U.S. military to improve safety and security in our region, while also maximizing opportunities that this military buildup will present the island. Where do you stand on that?
Um, I I shared earlier, I used to be, I served in the army. I also worked for a company that does a lot of big contracts for the government. I've been cleared to some of the most highest levels of information in regards to how important Guam plays in regards to national security and just security in the region. So I know how important it is, but I also want to share that I also am Chamorro, and my family lives on Guam. In fact, most of my family lives on Chamorro Land Trust land. So I understand a lot of that frustration, and I understand how a lot of locals, are looking, need land, and how the military, had, that stigma on that the military doesn't care. But I think that, what we need to do as leaders is have a more open dialogue, and more, improve our communication, and ensure that we as leaders are ensuring that our community and our families and our people are being heard with the military. I support the military build up 110%. There's just a lot of things that I think we can probably have more input in, and definitely work with them in addressing a lot of the concerns of the community. Like, when you hear about the cultural sites, and some of the excess land. That's a big thing that's being discussed right now, right? Excess land that the military is not going to use, and the government, our local government, not talking to the original landowners, and so those are the things that, again, like the previous question, transparency, and I think that's it's our local leaders that are hurting us more than helping us in regards to our strengthening our relationship with the military, and so, yes, the military should be held accountable, and we need to ensure that we preserve our culture and our environment. But at the same time, I don't think a lot of things are being shared in regards to what the local government, the government of Guam, is saying and doing with the federal government, and then that's creating that misunderstanding, I guess, right? And I think or I know that that's something that we need to bring to the legislature, that we have somebody that again can ask these tough questions, like what was really said, and what agreements were made, and what can we do to help our people, because I think that that's important.
Absolutely, and you hit it right on the head of the nail. Is our leaders, be it from the legislative branch or the executive branch, they are elected. So when I meet when the citizen, the voter, my seat at the table is that leader that I put in place to represent me, the island, our concerns. We are definitely in support of continuing the collaboration, and taking advantage of the opportunities with the military buildup. But we are also very sensitive of those items of concern for our local community. This is, I mean, our interfresi is, you protect the land, you protect the water, you protect the air. That's just something that's ingrained in our culture, and it's something that cannot be overlooked. Every facet of our community, and the concerns that we share, or maybe not share, but they all are and should be represented by our leaders at that table. So it is important that the leaders report back to the community, bring our concerns and report back the discussion. And it's always that limbo area of like what happened, and if we're not informed on a regular basis, which we should be, then that's I think that's where a lot of the mistrust or lack of trust starts and sparks throughout the community with our elected leaders. Because yes, the land issue is very sensitive. My family has a ranch in Bulkfog, in Dedido, and that was one of the most recent sites in the news where they found burial remains and whatnot, and so that hit home. And we are very sensitive of that there is a way and a means to continue to move forward and progress this buildup, where the local population and businesses are supporting the military, and also taking advantage of the opportunities that's coming. Because let's be honest, pandemic, Guam's only true industry, flatline, and right now it's still a low flatline. That's just the truth of the matter. So without the buildup and all of the opportunities through the contracting associations, and then the auxiliary services that are supporting all of those efforts, our economy, we would have been in a way worse situation. And I'm just going to call it for what it is. The amount of money that's being pumped into our local economy by way of the military buildup is a great thing for Guam. But let's just continue to have that discussion and that dialogue, and make it open and transparent, and I think everyone will find a way to be satisfied in the end. So I appreciate your outlook on that, and it leads to our coin flip question with the candidates. It's always they're always like, oh, I don't know, but you can again you can support, you can say you do not support, or you can elaborate. And the last one is a support for a part-time legislature.
Absolutely. I've said this in the last election, and I'll say it again. I don't think that, Guam, when you look at a lot of the work that's been done in the legislature, I mean, for as long as I've been watching it and following it for the last 15 years as an adult, I mean, the biggest work, the biggest task they have at hand every year is putting together a budget, right? And that's even at that, like you look at the public hearings, and if you go and look at a lot of the public hearings for the budgets, you look at how many senators were there, and those are the same senators that will probably sit here and tell you that, yes, we need to be full-time, right? But yet they're not. And so I don't think it should be full-time. You look at outside the public hearings for that big responsibility, which is passing budget of the government of Guam, there's really not a lot that even oversight. I mean, you look at a lot of things that have gone on with the pandemic, you'd think there would be all these oversight hearings, and because that's another big responsibility that they have. Right. And so if you don't know, the legislature passes a budget. That's their main responsibility. They hold oversight on government agencies, and they pass laws. Those are the three things that they're responsible for. When you look at those three things and how active, even let's go with 50% of the senators, right? You don't see 7 or 8 senators at public hearings. You don't see 7 or 8 senators or having oversight. You go look at the oversight hearings for a lot of these committees, right? Like where have you been, right? And that's indicative of my statement that it's not a full-time job. And people are going to say, well, you make it part-time, and only the rich people are going to go and run for senator because they're the only ones that are going to be. I don't find that to be true, because again, it's part-time. You're not asking. It'll open up opportunity for people that work, mid-level positions or jobs to go and serve, because it's not. I don't think it's about the rich people, because I mean, even now, then that would be the case. You'd have rich people running because they can run and still have businesses and still run, working corporate jobs, but that's not the case. So absolutely, I don't think we need a full-time legislature. Maybe staff, right? Because again, the senator is not the one that does the research. The senator is usually not the one that writes the bills, although I know a couple that do, but majority of them, they have a full-on staff, at least 3 people, right? So I'd support staff maybe to do the research and the writing and process the paperwork and do all the administrative stuff that is required for their duties. But the senator just shows up to public hearings, which most of them don't do. The committees hold hearings, which most of them don't hold, and then they show up to session, and then that's probably they'll be at session, right? And I'm gonna say things. I don't want to say anything that I'm gonna take back, but definitely part-time, 110%.
And that is why we have candidates on the We Want to Know Action Pack show. You heard it here first. Senatorial candidate Mr. Vince Borja. I have to commend and appreciate your candor and your time, sir. It's always a
Appreciate it. Thank you
pleasure.
for having me.
I believe that this is my personal belief. I believe that a lot of the ideas and your areas of concern and the solutions that you're offering are the modern approach that's necessary for Guam moving forward. That's my belief. And so I want to empower our viewers and members and voters. Get out there and make your voice be heard. Listen to this interview back again. See where Mr. Borja's ideas and his solutions and the way he envisions Guam moving forward and the importance of certain issues that aren't being addressed in our current legislature, how he envisions it moving forward. If that aligns with the Guam that you want to see moving forward, you got to remember to vote for him, and you got to remember to vote for the other candidates that were on our show that's also aligned with what you see. We're not going to tell you how to vote. We're going to empower you to vote. So before I close this show, Vince, can you please remind everyone where they can find you on the ballot and maybe a closing remark?
All right, Phil, thanks for having me. Thank you to Action Pack and their members for this opportunity. My name is Vince Borja. I'm number 3 on the Republican side. And I just want to leave with one thing. I want the people of Guam to know that this election is probably going to be, we said the last election, this was going to be the most critical one. But I think now that the pandemic is behind us, the community is open up. A lot of candidates have the opportunity to go out and talk and really be, engage the voters. I think this election is probably going to be the most critical election in regards to where the direction Guam goes. Because the leaders that you elect today, gubernatorial to Congress, and especially in the legislature, because the legislature probably has the most biggest responsibility in regards to how the government runs. And so you need to, like Phil said, really pay attention to the candidates and when you go to the ballot box, think of the Guam that you want. Think of the Guam that you want your kids to grow up in, and that's who I hope you vote for, because we need leaders that care about not just what happens today or tomorrow, but what happens in the next 10, 15 years. And so that's why I'm here. I'm here because I have two kids at home that we want to live and stay on Guam and make Guam a home for them and for everybody else's kids. And so I ask for just one of your votes so that we can take Guam and give them back. So thank you for your time, Phil, and thank you for Action Pac and their members for this opportunity. Vince Borja, number 3 on the Republican side. Thank you.
Excellent. You heard that. Vince Borja, number 3 on the Republican side of the ballot. And I do always want to remind our voters and viewers that in the general election, you are able to cross, so you aren't barred of just one or the other side. So let's put personal or even family loyalty bias aside. Let's stop voting based off of a campaign commercial or a promise. Listen to the candidates. Take the time to listen to them. Listen how they answer the questions. I guarantee you, our citizens, we're knowledgeable and smart enough to hear it, to hear how sincere they're coming off, and then really hear their solutions. If it sounds like the same thing that they've been saying for the past X amount of elections, it's time that we vote different. Or if they've continued to fight, then and you'll come to that conscious conclusion. But I absolutely echo what Mr. Borja just mentioned. I vote for my children. I vote for the Guam that they're going to inherit. The 36th Guam legislature just passed a $1.1 billion budget. The next legislature is going to be responsible for ensuring that we have transparent information of how everything's spent or how it's being allocated. And also B, doing the checks and balances on that money that in the end, every one of you are paying for, every one of us are paying for. We are the tax-paying citizens that are supporting this massive budget moving forward. So from our economy, from our crime, from our education, and all the other facets of that make up our island life, it's important the leaders going into the 37th legislature. So be that knowledgeable and informed voter. The listener, you have the power, and you have the vote, and your vote must be cast in order for it to count. So with that said, the Action Pac has the early voting van. We have the voting van. Use our gas to cast your vote. Gather 10 to 15 of your coworkers, your soccer team, your family, and early voting is in full swing. The Action Pac has a seat for you on the Action Pac voting van. We're offering transportation services for groups of up to 15 persons per trip. Gather your group, team, family, coworkers, and vote together. Everyone has a seat to the polls on the Action Pac voting van. You can reach us at 472-6311 or email takeactionguam@gmail.com and we'll pick you up. Pre-scheduling is necessary, but this is going to go on. This service will continue throughout the early election, which is happening now up until November 3rd at the Westin Guam, and then also on election day on November 8th. So pre-schedule, use our gas to cast your vote. If you have any questions or concerns, you can email me at takeactionguam@gmail.com. Stay alert and stay informed. Become an Action Pac member today at actionpacguam.com. Membership is free, and you'll be able to be added to our newsletters. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook at actionpacguam.com. My name is Phil Leddy. This is your senatorial candidate, Mr. Vince Borja, vying for one of your 15 votes. Let your voice be heard this election and vote Guam. Thank you so much, and have a nice day.